What's up guys, it's Michael here. In this video, we are going to talk about what should you do when you receive a 1099 NEC. So meaning is, there are two types. There's ones you basically give out to someone else, you issue to someone else, or in this case, what happens if you receive it? Smack the like button like you smacked your taxes during its due date by watching this video last minute. And make sure to subscribe because I invited a tax expert to explain what you should do when you receive a 1099 NEC. Timestamps will be down below, so if you're looking for something specific, just search for it down below or on the video. See you on the other side.
Today, let's talk about how to report Form 1099 NEC income on your tax return. A lot of people receive 1099 NEC form at the beginning of the year. And first of all, why do you receive a 1099 NEC form? So you probably receive a 1099 because you work for someone else during the past year, but not as an employee. For example, if you got paid as a freelancer or contractor, the person you work for is required to keep track of this payment to you and give you a 1099 NEC form showing that the total you received during the years. In order for them to be able to deduct that expenses as ordinary necessary expenses from their income. So they have to issue you a Form 1099. So who is considered a contractor? So as long as you're not an employee, so you receive payment for services. For example, if you're a consultant, you're a janitor, you're a gardener, or you provide other services such as sales services and they pay you for it, but not treating you as an employee and give you a W-2. So instead, you will get a 1099 NEC. So once you receive a 1099 NEC, what are you going to do about it? So first of all, do not ignore it. Some of the people ignore it, then you probably will receive a letter from the IRS in the future. So when you receive a 1099 form, first of all, check the information, see if the information is correct. Also, check the amount, see if the amount reported is correct. They keep track, the people who issue the form, they keep track of the payment. So sometimes they can make mistakes. So if they over-report it to the IRS, then the IRS's record is not going to match yours. Then that will create some problem. So here is an example of the 1099 form, why you should not ignore it, because one copy is going to report it to the IRS, and one copy is going to report it to the state, and the third copy is going to be sent to you. So all the information on the forms are identical. So how do you report a 1099 NEC income? So if you are an individual, you receive a 1099 NEC, you include that in your Form 1040. If you are sole proprietorship, and you also report it in a 1040. If you are single member LLC, you report it on your 1040 or report it on 1065 or 1120. It depends if you make an election to change this company to another form of an entity. If you're partnership and LLC, then you're going to include that in your 1065. And if a corporation, most of the time corporation will not receive a 1099 NEC, but for some company, just they're being conservative, they issue 1099 NEC to everyone, regardless the form of their business. So if the Form 1099 you receive, you find that right here, they have a payer's information, the payer's tax ID, your name, and the total amount. If any of this information is not correct, especially for the box number 1, this amount is not correct, you need to contact the payer and have them issue a correct one. So they need to send another form and mark the box and send it back to the IRS and give you a correct form. So you can report it to your tax return and also agree with your tax return. So where and how you report it, let's go through it quickly. This is a Form 1099 NEC. $18,000 reported to the IRS. So basically, this company tell the IRS that they pay you $18,000. They are going to take a deduction of this $18,000 And you, as a recipient, you're going to include this $18,000 to your tax return. So someone get a deduction and someone pick up as income. So the government will not lose any money. So the tax money is going to go to the government. Someone have to pay for the tax. So how is it reported on the Form 1040? So this section mainly talk about how an individual or sole proprietor or single member report that 1099 income in the tax return. There are two options. One, you can put into Schedule 1, Line 8 as other income if you don't have other expenses to subtract from the $18,000. Or you have a lot of expenses, ordinary and necessary for you to make that $18,000, meaning that the expenses have to incur in order for you to make that $18,000, then you should use Schedule C. Reduce that $18,000 and the net income going to be reported under 1040. This is important because the 1099 NEC income is subject to self-employment tax. The self-employment tax rate for federal is 7.65% because you are an employer and an employee in this case, so you pay double of that. So it's 7.65% times 2, so which is roughly 15%, even though you can deduct the portion you pay as an employer. So let's take a look where in Schedule 1 you're going to report that. Here's a copy of the Schedule 1. On line 8, you can just put in that $18,000. And remember, this $18,000 is going to subject to the 15%, 14% self-employment tax, which you are liable for that. The next one is Schedule C. Schedule C is for people who have 1099 income and you also have other expenses incur in order for you to make that $18,000. You're going to use Schedule C. So here's an example of a Schedule C. On line 1, part 1, put in the $18,000. And then on line 2 to line 6, you put in other income or any inventory costs if your business involves inventory. Part 2 is the expenses. These are the operating expenses. They give you some example. Advertising, car expenses, which we already have a section talk about that. Commission and fees. Commission and fees, if you pay anybody for commission over $600, you also need to issue them a 1099 NEC in order for you to take a deduction properly. Right here, contractor expenses and also involve 1099 NEC. Here are a list of the expenses you can deduct. And on line 30, you can also deduct home office expenses. And line 31, after you deduct all the expenses, $18,000 may reduce to a certain amount. That number is going to subject to the 7.65% employment tax. And remember, because you're self-employed, you are an employer and an employee, so you pay double of that. Right here is a list of the example for typical deductions. You have advertising, you advertise your business. You have a car used for business. You have contractor expenses. If you buy capital assets such as furniture or building or any capital asset, you can also take a deduction for depreciation. You pay for lawyer, accountant, those are professional legal fees. You have office expenses, you have rent and more. We have another section to talk about all these expenses. So in summary, when you receive a 1099 NEC, do not ignore the income is already reported to the IRS, so you need to include that income in your tax return. How? If you don't have any expenses to subtract from that 1099 income, you just simply put into Schedule 1. And that amount is going to subject to self-employment taxes. And the self-employment tax is 6.2% for Social Security, 1.45% for Medicare. And you need to pay double of that because you are an employer and an employee. if you have expenses to be subtracted from the 1099 NEC income, then you should use Schedule C. The income is deducted by all the expenses, then the net amount is going to subject to self-employment tax. So we are going to have more sections talk about Schedule C, the expenses you're entitled to deduct, and if you receive a Form 1099 miscellaneous, we're going to have another section to explain that. If you have any question, please let me know. And also check with your tax advisor, see which form is better off for you to report the income and how you should properly report the income. Thank you.